welcome to What's Happening Now on KBLKradio.com, and thank you for tuning in this morning. This is your host, Bishop Bowser, and we have an exciting show for you today, and we want everybody to be listening. Now, we know we're doing a little networking here, so, right now you got to get up and text somebody or call somebody, at least 7 people or some people that you know, and tell them to tune into this show right here, right now. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this morning we have a good one for you. We have Joanne Fields. We have Ground Up Youth Foundation's founder and CEO, Sean Manny, and Coach Marcus Stevens. We have student athletes Brandon McCoy, Gerard Andrews, and Eli Stevens to discuss the importance of proactive civic engagement, PACE, and to register to vote. That's tomorrow by October 24th. That's the deadline. If you want to call to join in on this conversation, you can call us at 619-919-4745. Again, that is 619-919-4745. Now, maybe you didn't have your pen. Maybe you're trying to, write it down. So I'm going to give you a quick second. And so grab that pen, grab that piece of paper, type it in your phone and your notes. That number is to join in on this conversation is 619-919-4745. Don't be shy. Call on in. Now, today, I have a quote for you that it really is fitting for the times that we're living in today. I mean, back 50 years ago and so, Martin Luther King, when he was doing the fighting for civil rights and so on, he said something that I think, especially the church and pastors and so on, that wants to be leaders and pillars in our community need to take heed to. And he said, if a man has not discovered something that he will die for, he isn't fit to live. That's what Martin Luther King said, Jr. said. And I think that, today we need to take heed to that, because people are more concerned about self-preservation than they are about their community and their fellow man. So we got to get past that. Now, I have something I want to say here, especially to churches and pastors with what's recently been going on. And one of the scriptures that come to my mind is found in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 11 through 13. And this is Jesus speaking. I'm reading from the Message Bible. And he says, and I quote, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd puts the sheep before himself, sacrifices himself if necessary. A hired man is not a real shepherd. The sheep mean nothing to him. He sees a wolf come and runs for it, leaving the sheep to be ravaged and scattered by the wolf. He's only in it for the money. The sheep don't matter to him." And unfortunately, many of our pastors care nothing about people and care nothing about our community, care nothing about the folks that they're preaching to and so on. Just concerned more about money, popularity, and power, while the wolves are making havoc of the church and our communities, because we have so many charlatans and hirelings for spiritual leaders. They don't care about the sheep. And so, today we got to start rallying that cage and getting people to start standing up and speaking out. And it begins with leadership, and it begins with the church. And so, let me tell you another thing. When you stand for what is right, it's not going to always be peaceful. Now, we are peaceful people and peacemakers. We should do that when it's appropriate. But don't confuse nonviolence with civil disobedience, because even though we don't believe in violence, we will disrupt some stuff. So, but here's the thing. I know a lot of people saw the movie Nat Turner. Some didn't see it. I read about him years ago. But, we can go back and look at that and say, oh, now I see, because white supremacy tries to tell the black church to sit in the corner somewhere, be quiet, because we're supposed to be peaceful. So, don't you get out there and protest. Don't you get out there and march. Don't you get out there and do anything. But Jesus said in Matthew 10 and 34, "Don't think that I come to send peace on the earth. I didn't come to send peace, but a sword." In another place, he said, I believe it's Luke 12:51, "Do you think that I've come to give peace in the earth? I'll tell you, no, but rather division." When you standing for righteousness, and when you're coming up against a wicked and the evil system, you most definitely gonna have to speak out and cry about it, and sometimes it might get you in trouble, like it did with John the Baptist when he told the king, "It's not right for you to have your brother's wife." So when think about that. Look at the prophet Jeremiah. And he said in Jeremiah 15:10-11, and this is the Message Bible, he said, unlucky mother, that you had me as a son, given the unhappy job of indicting the whole world. I never hurt or harmed a soul, and yet everyone is out to get me. But God knows I've done everything I could to help them, pray for them, and against their enemies. I've always been on their side, trying to stave off this disaster. God knows how I've tried. And Jeremiah, we call him the weeping prophet, because he cried, oh, he said if his hair was a fountain of tears, he'd weep day and night for the slaughter of his people. And he tried to speak out against this unjust system that was going on in the midst of his nation, and he was persecuted for it. But thank God that the Lord was on his side. And today, folks are just afraid to speak out, afraid to do anything. You're trying to protect your 501c3 status. You're trying to protect yourself and the funding and money that you're getting and preserve yourself. You don't want to rile up and disturb white supremacy. But I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, eventually you're going to have to take a stand, or things are going to continue to get worse in our society. We have an obligation, a moral obligation, to stand up and speak about righteousness and what is just. So there's a gentleman that his name is Mark Galley. He's the editor of Christianity Today, and he wrote an article entitled, "It Takes a Church to Protest: Why Civil Disobedience Runs in Our Blood." And I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read some of it. And he said, and I quote, "We must choose our moments. We are called to obey the governing authorities, found in Romans 13, and should first exhaust other means. Not every injustice requires a protest. Most of the time, working the system can work wonders. But there are times when it doesn't, and those in power need to be startled into paying attention to injustice. Nonviolent direct action," wrote Martin Luther King Jr. in his letter from Birmingham jail, "seeks to create such a crisis and establish such creative tensions that a community that has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue." Christians are called to be peacemakers, yes, but sometimes the path of peace is strewn with crisis and tension that we peacemakers create. But not all of us. There are times and seasons. Those responsible for the financial and emotional welfare of spouses and young children may not be able to risk even a night in jail. And this illuminates why civil disobedience is a churchly act, something the Christian community does together. We tend to think of it as brave individualism, but it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a church to effectively protest injustice. Some will suffer jail time or onerous fines, while others offer child care, prepare meals, and help pay fines. Nearly every 1960s civil rights activist sitting in jail was surrounded by a supportive and praying church. Prayer, of course, is not an afterthought, merely a technique to comfort those in jail. Christian civil disobedience is nothing but anarchy if not done in obedience to the real sovereign. It's not an angry reflex or only a community act, but an act of faith discerned through prayer. And it is performed as obedience worked out in love. Love of God and even the institutions and people who thwart injustice. If civil disobedience is in our blood, the love of God is the heart that pumps justice through our veins. And that's the end of quote. So we must speak truth to power. And if not now, when? There's an urgency in the moment. White supremacy, middle class respectability is affecting the way the church responds. The dominant narrative is not just a story, but is white dominance and enactment of privileges on some and punishment on others. Blacks are being killed in the streets. They've been gathered up for mass incarceration, and we face economic oppression. It's time for the church to stand up and be counted, or go somewhere and shut up. Stand up or shut up. So today we have with us Miss Joanne Fields. We have Sean Manning. We have Marcus Stevens. And we have some athletes also with us. And I just want to say to you all, welcome to the show. And thank you for being on What's Happening Now.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So you all are doing a lot when it comes to civic engagement. What are some of the things you guys got going on? And whoever wants to speak first.
Well, this is Sean Manning. I'm the CEO and founder of Ground Up Youth Foundation. And I just want to say thank you for having us this morning. It's a beautiful day in San Diego.
Yes, it is.
So a couple years ago in the MLK Rec Council, we came up with an idea because Miss Jewel Hooper, who had been a pillar in our community and talked about, she moved to San Diego just because in D.C. at the time they weren't even eligible to vote. It was not even legal. So that was one of the reasons why she migrated to California. And so the importance of voting and the importance of who we hire, and not only that, how we choose to hire people. There needs to be a protocol in place to allow people to have the information they needed to put people in place to give the community and the people in the community the opportunity to have their needs fulfilled. And so we came up with proactive civic engagement, PACE. And we just recently were able to put students in front of two of our new people running for school board this week, and we have brought African students of all descent, Mexican, Filipino, white, and black students with different questions that not only affected their education, but also their culture and how they intertwine both of them. So we were able to put that event together, and it was very good, informative for the students to be able to ask the proper questions and have the diversity in questions to help our clients, our people running for office, the opportunity to have questions that will be thrusted towards them if they are elected.
And Ms. Marcus Stevens, your dad, Reverend George Stevens, he was a pillar in the community, honorable man, stood up to the system and everything, and so on. So, is that what kind of got you involved in all of this, or?
Yeah, that, and also just my own awareness of I have two young sons. Well, not young. One is 27, and one is 8. So that, and just him also instilling in me the need to give back to the community and always help and reach back. No matter where you at, you need to always reach back and give somebody else a chance and help them become what they want to become, and to stand up for what's right as well. He was one to never back down from any kind of situation.
That's right.
And I know if he was here today, he would be leading the charge against what's going on here in the community.
Amen. We need more leaders like him. That's for sure. So how do we get people civically involved to be engaged in the community? So, because, especially in communities of color, we see that lack of civic engagement. I think what you guys are doing is wonderful because we can get it in our young children and they grow up with that foundation. We'll really see some changes and improvements later on with young people being involved, especially today with the millennials. A lot of these guys, they turned off by the political system. They, and I'm not saying all of them, but they're so frustrated and angry. You can hear it in their language. You can see it in their actions. How do we turn this around, and get these folks to focus on the right things so we can get people more involved civically?
I think number one is we have to meet them where they're at. Not just young people, it's all people. We think, what's in it for me? How is my vote going to affect me? Because that's what I'm hearing with the presidential election. We don't really have a choice. But if you don't make your choice, if you don't vote, your vote is your voice. So the person that gets elected is going to determine what the interest rates are when you buy your house, what your student loans are going to look like, if they're going to be forgiven or be inflated. So there is an effect in everyday life. But with the candidates forum that we had with Dr. Sharon Whitehurst Payne and Lachey Collins, they directly affect not just our young people, but their future. They determine where funds go. They determine what programs, if ethnic studies will be taught in a way that takes 1 year, 6 months, or never happen at all. They're making major decisions that will impact their lives, and then it impacts our community because what happens to them will happen in the future if they're in college or if they're in prison. So with Ground Up Youth Foundation, we're trying to break the pipeline to prison. And that means empowerment in school, in academics, and politically, and have political capital. But we need to meet people where they're at. We have a deadline to register to vote October 24th. You don't even have to look for, place to get the ballot or the application, voter register. You can go online, sdvote.com. There are over 30 propositions on the San Diego ballot alone.
Yeah.
You don't have to try to figure it out on your own. You can go research it online or come to a forum like we had at Lincoln High School. I know that Pillars of the Community had something. There are other community groups, the NAACP joining with BayPAC and League of Women Voters. So there's a lot of information out there. It's a matter of getting it out in a way that people will want to hear it. So whether it's social media or if it's on the radio like we are now.
Okay. And we're going to take a break and we're going to come back because I most definitely want to talk about locally and nationally as far as when we talk about elections and reaching out and connecting with our younger generation. So we're going to take a break and we'll be back after these brief commercials.
Sunshine, blue skies, and KBLK.
All right, welcome back to What's Happening Now on KBLKradio.com, and thank you for staying with us. And we're still in this conversation talking about proactive civic engagement, and we do, as Joanne says, you got to get out tomorrow. If you haven't registered to vote, you can do it today. You can go right now, go online, and you can register to vote. But we need you to do this. We need you to do this because it's very important. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask in regards to, because even right now I'm undecided. And I know I'm going to vote on local issues. I always do that. But when it comes to the presidency and things like that, I know that's important too. I'm still undecided, not from the perspective of whether I'm going to choose between Trump and Hillary, but whether I'm going to vote for president or not. So because Trump are automatically excluded. I try to give him a chance, but I'm trying to be fair. But he just, he's too out. Yeah, he's too out, at least for me. But because especially now today, I from talking with young folks and the millennials and the Generation X or whatever, a lot of these guys are very turned off about voting. A lot of times they look at it from a national level, and I know there's local issues that are very important and so on, but sometimes it seems like if a person's not excited about what's on top of the ballot, they may not even go out. So how do we encourage them to get out there and vote?
Well, I just think it's connectivity to something, and the politics and the politicians are connected to someone. It affects everyone. If a kid wants to skateboard, how does he get the right to skateboard in certain areas? So it affects everyone. So I think a forum like this does open it up, as we have young men from 8 all the way up to 21 years old.
Right.
So just that gap, the big gap that we have in age also requires time and energy, and then the connectivity comes, and then it perks interest.
Right.
And if we can peel the energy from within our young males and females, then we know that they have empowerment, and then we have accountability, and then attachment comes, and then now here comes the responsibility to step up and be have a voice.
All right. And we have a young man in here with us, Eli, 8 years old. How old are you, Eli? 8? All right, Eli Stevens. So this is the Reverend George Stevens' grandson then. All right, let's what you have to say.
Hi, my name is Eli Stevens, and I am 8 years old. I am a student athlete with Ground Up. Please register to vote because your vote determines my future.
That's right. That's right. And we don't even think about that, do we? We don't think about our children. They can't vote. So they're depending on us to get out there and get involved and to vote for them because they're the future depends, especially when it comes to school board. Can you share with us a little bit about the two candidates that is running for, I think it's Lachey and what is Sharon? Her name is?
Yes, Dr. Sharon Whitehurst Payne.
Yes. Can you share a little bit with us about that?
So currently, Dr. Sharon Whitehurst Payne is filling the last of Marnie Foster, former Board of Trustees term. So the election come November 8 will determine who will continue, whether it's Sharon or Lachey Collins. Both are very passionate to represent District E. District E includes Lincoln High School, Morris High School, and Crawford High School. But essentially, they represent the whole school district because they vote on issues that affect the whole school district in San Diego Unified. So I would invite everyone to check out the former Facebook Live that we had last Thursday because you will begin to see it or hear a difference on how they approach certain issues, whether it's representation for the Asian Pacific Islander community or our student athletes. Brandon McCoy, he brought up an issue that affected him directly. And there was an attempt to block his transfer from charter school into Morris High School. Well, we had to seek help from the school board because the athletic director said that his hands are tied, everybody's hands are tied, but what would happen if there was no advocacy?
Right.
So he spoke up for himself, he advocated for himself at the school board meeting. That makes a major difference for his own future, but also other student athletes that were blocked, like Dante Foster. And those are students that we know of. I'm sure there's other students that may have been affected by this, but again, this is their future. If he's not on the court or if he's not involved in, sometimes the students' motivation is participating in sports, we lose them altogether. So again, with the two, I invite you to search for their website and listen and just reach out and talk to them and ask what will affect you and your student or your community school.
What is the difference between these two candidates that stand out?
Well, my personal opinion, I know that Sharon Whitehurst Payne is a former HR staff of San Diego Unified, so she has that experience. But with Lachey Collins, I have the experience of working with her in State Assembly member Shirley Weber's office. So I know she's very passionate, and she has two young students, her own kids that are going through the school system at the moment. And their approach, as it affects me, in being Filipino and representing the Filipino community issues, I do see a difference. Sharon tells me to go advocate, which I have for years. And Lachey is talking about creating an advisory board. Okay. So there is a distinct difference. Are you going to back us and just say continue advocating, or are you going to create an advisory that can create action and move forward? Right. So that's the difference I see for myself. Right. But I can't speak for everybody. That's not an issue for everyone. Right. So it could be for programs and services accessed on campus. A lot of our families, their basic needs aren't being met. So meet them where they're at. Can you go to the school so they don't have to have 3 or 4 different appointments to find out information for a food bank, or how to sign up for Covered California or other services that should be provided to them. But it may be a challenge. But since you're dropping off your student at school, let it be a one-stop shop because they're already there. Right.
So what is the difference between, is there a difference, I should say, between, going out to vote and, we're talking about the presidents. If you don't, a lot of people are turned off by the what's on the top of the ticket when you talk about presidents. And, man, I forget it. I ain't even voting. I'm not going to vote. But there's so many local issues. But I guess the question is, even if a person, the lesser, should they choose a lesser evil in the sense of a president, or should they just vote that locally on the ballots? What is your thoughts on this election process and people being proactively involved with civic engagement? We can begin with you, Sean, and then Marcus.
Well, I do think that we do need to focus on things that are near and dear to us, that are close to us, and then we can build on the bigger picture on the national stage. I'm someone that's able to travel to various states and various communities and see that there is really the same issues all around the world. Right. So if we just focus on what we're doing and find a way to connect with other communities in the same obstacles that we may have in our communities, and I think it will bring on a broader scale. Right. So we can march together and have a bigger voice and a bigger opinion. As we looked at the recent issues in El Cajon, where we had a lot of people outside coming into the community trying to protest, and there was not a lot of structure, so it brought a lot of confusion, and it allowed the police to look at us as uncivilized and, as you say, non-peaceful. So I think if those groups had come together, smaller groups, and then came together with a big protocol, then we would have been able to address some of the issues with less being able to be pointed fingers at and things of that nature. So I think look at what's close to us, and then helps us get a broader perspective and a bigger vision.
Gotcha. Marcus.
Sean pretty much summed it up right there. But I also believe that civic engagement is very important. It's an important life skill that we must instill in our youth.
Okay.
And young and old as well.
Right.
You know, because there's some older people that probably have never voted as well. Mm-hmm. They just go through time and just bide their time and just do what they have to do, handle their business with their kids and their family. But it's also a way for us to produce productive and active citizens. Mm-hmm. So at a young age, like Sean was saying, we have from 8 to 21 Ground Up Youth Foundation, and older kids and men as well, 23, 24. But we have the youngsters, the 8-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, the 12, 13. They're seeing it right now how important their voice can be. Right. And by them taking a step out and understanding that they have a choice, they can make a choice right now as a youngster to let us older people, so-called older people, know that they're really concerned about where their life is headed. And just being active in the community and having dialogue amongst all different type of nationalities, whether it be Pacific Islander, Hispanics, black, white, we're all underneath the skin, we're all the same person.
Human beings.
So we all have to get together and just realize that that's what's important. That's the bottom line.
Right. And Joanne?
So when it comes to the presidential election, like you had brought up, there is a choice. You vote for either candidate or none at all. And I feel that if you don't vote, you're giving up your right to say, you know what, I'm not in alignment with, Trump's just about anti-everything. Right? And or with Hillary Clinton, who may not be your all around, but would represent most of your issues or values. And no one is perfect. Right. If there was a perfect candidate, they would have already risen to the top, but they haven't. And we have a choice right now on November 8th to participate in the electoral process. And if we don't, all the sacrifices that people made for us, we stand on their shoulders. We don't want that to go in vain. People were beat down, killed, hung, prevented from going to vote. It still happens in some other states that there's a block to or making it harder for people to go out and vote. So we need to stay focused and know that it is important for all of us to participate in this process.
Well, let me ask another question for you, and if you all want to jump in, you can jump in. Here's the thing that, one of the things I've heard, and it used to affect me too, like California's a blue state, they say, which is a Democratic state. And I've heard people say, oh man, I don't have to worry about that because they're going to, California's going to put Hillary in there anyway. So because this is a blue state. So what do you say to that? Versus when people see that, say, well, I don't have to worry about that. That's who's going to get in there because it's a blue state. So I'm going to just focus on local issues.
Well, I love to see movements that had happened before us. If we stuck with that mentality, there wouldn't be any movement. I love the way that Tupac, Snoop, back in the day, they were trying to organize because they translated the power of their influence through entertainment and music. Through their music, they sold 3 million records. They could create their own party. We could create our own party with that many people interested. So knowing that was taking place, it's up to us to organize. Like Sean said, there's small groups. If we all band together and we don't disrupt other's mission, your mission, Bishop Bowser, with the radio station and all the affiliations that you have, the mission that Ground Up Youth Foundation has, the mission of other groups out in the community are all important. They speak to different segments of the community. Right. My influence means nothing to other groups, and vice versa. But if we do have a common ground to create change in the community, then we can do that because there's power in numbers. Right. So I wouldn't worry about party, if there is that big concern, if it's blue or red, then we need to change it. Let's create it purple. Because sometimes there are Republican representatives that are doing good. The same in the blue. But no one is perfect. No party is perfect. But we need to identify who represents you the best, and then go there. If a party doesn't, then you need to either create or find other groups. There's Green Party, there's Libertarian, there's others. So you got to do your research. You can't just hand it over to you. You got to go to work.
Sean or Marcus, you have anything you want to add to that?
I would just say that the connectivity, I'm big on that right now. That's a word I'm using a lot, and have people understanding that it's almost like you said, it goes to our communities now. What's prevalent in most of our African American communities is red and blue. And so if we look at the positive part, it's very hard to find a Crip that becomes a blood and vice versa. But if you look through history, there's been Republicans that in the 70s they were Democrats. And then in the 80s they became Republicans. So we can find good in all. So I think if we find a common ground for everyone to just find out what can I bring to the table that makes it good. When we had clubs in high school and people say, well, they're not really doing too much, so I'm not going to get involved. Well, if you feel like you have something that can help it move or better it, come bring your interest. And come bring your insight or just your sweat equity to make it better. And I think we don't have a lot of that. People feel like they don't have a opportunity to be important. And everything is important. And I think with the voting issues, as far as people not voting or feeling like, well, if we're already going to win, why not? Let's make sure. The guy at the end of the bench, if he claps and he's in the layup line and he's at practice, he has a value to the team. He may not score a point in that game, but he does have a value to it. So I want everybody to get up and get out and vote and find a way to make a difference. Just like right now we're talking about how good or bad the candidates that we have are now. There's somebody right now plotting to run 4 years from now.
That's right.
So we should all, when this vote is over that next day, let's start educating ourselves on what we need to make better. And then we can start, if we're conscious of what's going on daily, then we can start holding the people who are elected accountable for what we need and what we deserve in our community.
Absolutely. And I know one of the things that folks a lot of times don't look at is, everybody look at the numbers, then they look at the demographics of folks when they vote. We look at California as a whole, but they also look at San Diego. How did San Diego vote? How did Southeast San Diego vote? How did Lemon Grove vote? And so on. And so it's very important when we talk about that block of vote, because I really believe that people of color are the ones that makes the big difference when it comes to who gets in office and who doesn't get in office. And I believe, like you talk about that connectivity, when we are connected, not just with this state, but connected with people around our country and begin a real movement, we can really make real change and start moving people in the direction of the issues that need to be addressed in our community. Otherwise, they'll keep overlooking us on issues and things. They don't see that there's a block of vote here. If you don't deal with criminal justice, if you don't address that, you're not going to get in there, because these folks are going to go for the one that does, and so on. Joanne, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, just like we elected the current district attorney into office. You elect the judge who will sentence our young people that we're fighting for justice for. So someone's making the decision. Let it be us. Instead of being reactive and saying, hey, you should do this, you should do that. We should know what their values are before they even get into position, right? Hence pace, being proactive, civic engagement. We got to set the pace. Because if we let other people determine that, or that we don't seek out the information, other people are going to make the decisions. And then we're going to be reactive like we are now. Because the mayor of El Cajon was elected, right? So someone put him in position. There's residents there that did or did not vote. So don't be so mad that, we're dealing with XYZ. No, they could have been dealt with at the polls.
Right. Absolutely. So, Marcus, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Based on what I've been hearing as far as the elections and everything, I just believe that we just can't keep letting someone else dictate what's going to happen in our community, who they put in office. Because if we all don't vote and say, like you said, it's a blue state, it's a red state, they're going to get it in anyway, they're going to win. but you don't know that.
Right.
Whoever they put in is who they're going to put in.
That's true.
And if you don't make your vote and your voice count, you can't really, like you said, reactive. You can't come back later and say, well, why did they get in office?
That's true.
Well, because you didn't even exercise your right.
That's true.
That your parents and grandparents and great-great-grandparents died for.
Thank you.
To get the vote.
Thank you.
Now you have the vote, you don't use it.
Absolutely. And you know, that's very, very important, because I think many times we just take things for granted, or we let other people make decisions for us. And you know, a lot of times you hear people say, well, if you don't vote, then after the elections is over, you don't have nothing to say. Shut up and be quiet. You know, and that's very true. You know, hey, look, because, you know, you could have made a difference. Yeah. You know, and there's places like, I think, where was the mayor in Chula Vista? Was it Chula Vista? Somewhere was one
vote.
Yeah. One vote.
And there's 4 votes right here.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
One of us could have made that difference.
Exactly. So, you know, when you talk about the district attorney, when you talk about the sheriff, you know, the judges, the county board of supervisors, because they put in the chief of probation, all these other different folks. So, you know, there's a lot. How do we, you know, and I appreciate what you guys doing with the proactive civic engagement and so on, and how do we, like, you know, I know we do it through shows like, how do we really get that message out to our young people and where it can resonate?
Well, I just think it's important, like, who we hire and the accessibility. I remember Council Stevens being in office, and I had a group of young men that I wanted to take to a tournament. And so at the last minute, I reached out. He gave me $800. I used that $800 to get these kids all the way up to this tournament, and by the time I got back, no gas, no more money, but there was a $27,000 a year scholarship that came out of it. Wow. So I just think the accessibility, I was able to go in his office and present this to him, and he found a company and they gave me the money.
Wow.
And so just that's the connectivity again that we have.
Go. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But also the information, some of the titles that you just brought up are people don't even know that these are elected officials. They think he just worked hard, got a degree, put some time in, was able to get that position. We need to have the information out there so that they know these are elected people, and they don't have to be in there if you choose not to have them in there based on if they're the appropriate person for that position. They can get the job done.
Right, exactly.
So I think how do we get the information out there is really important. I think with the school board, education in the schools, Black history, the real history, not his story, but our story. How do we get that out? And we need to understand that we do control these situations.
Right, exactly. And, you know, and I think it's also important for, you know, when we talk about the local issues and things like that, for people to really look at it. When you talk about chief of police, the mayor appoints that person. And so it's important that your mayors, if we're talking about this criminal justice, we're talking about mass incarceration, we're talking about police brutality, we're talking about accountability, oversight, and things like that, because these are issues that we're dealing with in the community. And and we can see how that connects to school and everything else that revolves, that includes our life, anything that we're are part of. It affects us. It affects our lives in some way, in some form, when we look at that. Because, you know, if you today have a felony, you can't, you know, get certain housing, can't get certain loans, you can't get a job, all these other different things, you know. But if we allow them to continue to criminalize our community without fighting back and changing structures and systems, then we're going to continue to have to deal with that. So we got to be involved, you know. Do you see a difference between civic engagement and political participation?
A difference?
Yes.
I kind of think it's like the same thing, in a sense.
Right,
because if you're involved in your community and you're involved in your community, you're concerned about what goes on a day-to-day from all levels. Right. So, yeah, you have to be involved, and that's being engaged. That's how I look at it.
Right. Joy?
So civic engagement is not just voting.
Right.
It's also going to city council meetings. It is going to school board meetings. It's going to the PTA meetings. It's going to your son's game and just showing up, because that's being engaged. That you need to be present. And many times people want to just I forgot whose word that was, but keyboard warriors. They want to blast off on social media, but you don't see them in person. You know what I mean? They get bold and make statements on online. It's like, well, can you go do that at the school board meeting? Can you go shake it up with the mayor and city council, because they need to hear that. That's how you hold people accountable, being engaged, being present. And being political, to me, everything is political. Right. Everything's political. It's not just what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly. And, you know, and like Sean was saying, when you're talking about being connected, that connection that you have, if we're really connected and we're really supporting each other, really engaged, you know, and I want to say this, you know, because we have folks, especially when you talk about social media, they promote their events, and that's the only thing they support. And they don't support others who they're supposed to be collaborating with and networking with. But we need support for everything that we do. We support you, you support us, we got to support each other, and we got to be there for each other, and we got to have that connection so that we can make a difference. Okay, so we have some young folks that just stepped into the stepped into the conversation, and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Brandon McCoy. I go to Cathedral Catholic. I'm from Chicago.
And how old are you?
I'm 18 years old.
Oh, you can vote.
Yes, sir. I just registered the other day.
All right.
Hi, I'm Gerard Andrews. I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana. I just moved down from Louisiana about 2 years ago. I'm 21 years old. I came down to play college ball.
All right. Who you play for?
I play for Consumers River in Sacramento, but I moved down, and I'm going to kind of take it to the next level.
All right. All right. So what got you guys involved civically? You know, the becoming proactive in civic engagement. Why is it important to you?
I say because, you know, my mom's in the military, you know, and she's, you know, I see her, she go overseas, you know, for months, and you know, I see that she takes steps to become, you know, a good person. So I'm like, you know, if I can do something to help out this world, I can, you know, vote. You know, I'm 18 years old. You know, most people don't take the advantage that they have when they say that they can vote. Right. But, you know, I feel like, you know, if you can do it, you can do it.
So what do you say to the young folks out there that's, oh, man, I'm turned up, I ain't voting, I ain't doing nothing. You know, you're right there with them. What you say?
If you 18, like me, I just turned 18 June 11th. All right. Vote. Vote.
All right.
It's free.
Gerard?
And if you're a new resident coming from a different state, I think you should have, like it's not like a freedom of speech, like, when you're doing this. It's like you trying to better the community, trying to help the next person. It's not you being selfish and just think about yourself. You got to think about the younger generation from where you at now and what you think about you from 10 years from now. And how you can help the community be way more cleaner, just being in a positive and not the negative things going away that's always happening in the world now these days.
Right. And we have another young man that just joined us. Tell us who you are.
My name is Don Juan Robinson Parker. I'm 13 years old. I go to Roddy Middle School in Claremont, San Diego.
All right.
I've been with Ground Up since I was 8 years old.
Woo! So you've been with him for now. How old are you right now?
I'm 13.
So you've been with him for a few years now. That's all.
Bro, right there, yeah.
All right. So you're not old enough to vote yet, but you know you need us to get out there. But what you have to say to folks, because since you can't vote, what you gonna say to those that can vote that probably don't want to vote?
You should vote. Maybe the world could change.
Hey,
That's a good one.
That'll work. So I know when we look at the school system and you all, you know, coming up in that system and so on, before you got involved civically, you know, and able to vote and things like that, were there things that you wanted to change and felt powerless to do? And now when you look at it now, like, wow, you know, you know, I should have done this or, you know, whatever.
Oh yeah. Growing up in Chicago, you know, it's a really nice city, but you know, it's some bad stuff that goes on in Chicago. And so in the 8th grade, when I went to school out there, one thing that I wanted to change was, because I used to take the bus to and from home and school, I just wanted to change like the bus. Like it was really dirty, you know, like you know, and it was a lot of homeless people there, you know, and I felt bad for them because they didn't have anywhere to sleep, so they would sleep at the bus stop. And it would be dirty and stuff, and that's one thing I wanted to change because you want to be safe.
Right.
You want to be comfortable waiting on the bus. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes like it'll be times I just walk home, because I know it'll be like drug dealers or what I'm saying, it'll be killings or something right around the bus stop where I go to school at. And so like I end up walking home, and so that's one thing I really wanted to change was just my environment and like the littering and all that, and make my neighborhood really clean.
Right. And so now that you can vote and you understand a little bit more, so and being civically engaged and so on, so you have a voice and you can make some changes. Exactly. And so what do you say to those that are stuck in that situation right now?
Just keep working. I'm not saying I'm at a place right now, but I feel like I'm in a way better place than I was before. And I keep working and have a goal, set goals for yourself. Whether it's just day to day or just 5 years down the line, just set a goal, because what I do, like in the predicament that I'm in right now, I have a chance to, help my family and help the world. And so, just make goals and, always come back and don't forget where you come from. That's one thing that Uncle Sean and Jordan and Miss Joanne and them, my mom always tell me, don't forget where you come from. And, because there's so many people that get caught up in, that the life that they have, like NBA players and, celebrities, you forget where you come from. And so that's one thing that I would like to say, that I pray that I, go to church, that, I never forget about the people who helped me get in this position I am right now.
Right. And it's good to see you guys involved, because I know, like with me, I was anti-vote. I was against voting until I got in my 20s. And I got involved with the union, and I started seeing how politicians affect my pocket. And I started voting labor here. I said, who's pro-labor on the ballot?
I got American government, and so you actually, like, when you got I have American government because you have to take it your senior year, so it's really opening my eyes about politics and all that, and House of Reps and senators and how they have so much and like how they have like effect on your pockets. You can the money. They deal with all the money basically, and so you really got to pay attention to politics because you can really get lost in like how we say lost in the sauce.
Right. So Gerard, how do we get our young people to pay attention to politics and what's going on in this world, and so that they can be motivated to get involved?
I mean, you gotta think about it. Where I come from, I stay on the north side of you know what I'm saying? It ain't like the south side.
Right. Okay.
I feel like you don't have the same equal amounts as the south side and the north.
Okay.
Like it's poverty. So it's like they ain't really thinking about what's going on in the north. We don't have the extra help. We don't have someone come and tell us in the ear every day to do this, go to school, how you can go get a job. Vote, how all this, you know what I'm saying? Look at TV, look at the news, what's going on. Actually turn on the television instead of watching cartoons or this movie that just came out. Actually look at the news and the History Channel, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Know about what's really going on. Like opening your eyes and seeing the truth and not all the things that they want you to see. That's it. That's all it shows.
Right.
Really like reading that book. And I just wish it could have been, we could have seen it halfway, like it could be just what's going on in the south, it can happen on the north. In Louisiana, where I'm from.
Okay. So what do you mean when you say south and north?
Well, I'm from Lafayette. This is the north side and it's the south side.
Oh,
on the north side, you won't see nothing but drugs, the violent things, the things that everybody see now.
Right.
On the south side, I ain't trying to put it, but I'm saying, it's cleaner. You got the top stores. You see all the celebrities. That's where they go. Nobody really know nothing about where I'm from, because it's like, what is that for? They're trying to close down my high school.
Yeah, you have, and that's why politics and being involved, civically being involved is so important because of those kind of things. We're hearing things now, they might try to close down some of our schools right here in San Diego, Southeast, our schools. You're looking at San Diego High School, there's another school also they were talking about, I forget what school it was, but there's a couple schools that could be, lose their property and end up closing down or whatever. And so we got to be involved because we have to understand that, when we deal with this, we're dealing with a system and we're dealing with structural oppression and racism. And,
you just can't be scared of change. Like, that's for the best. You got to change.
Yeah.
You can't be on the same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
You can't wake up at 9 o'clock every day because it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You got to try to change your time schedule. You got to set yourself goals. You got to really set goals for your life. Like,
that's right.
all that plays a real big factor in your life.
Uh-huh.
I learned that. Really learned that. Like, I can't do the same thing. I can't be with the same people the whole time. If they ain't bringing no positivity in my life, it ain't good for me.
Amen. That's right. Look like you want to say something.
I want to say something. This is just one thought. Like, I pay attention to the American government. I probably could pay attention a little bit more. But one thing that I noticed, like talking about, because we were kind of talking about Africans when they're fresh off when they just got free from slavery, and they were struggling to vote and all that. When you look at it, when they said that like blacks and women can vote, they didn't make it a law. They made it an amendment.
Okay.
So like that's what I'm saying. Like you got to take advantage of this. It's an amendment. They don't even want to give us. They don't even want to make it a law that we can vote. So that's what I'm saying. Like you really got to take advantage. I know it's Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and all the extra stuff, but you really got to pay attention because it's actually more than one party. I mean, more than two parties that's running in the presidential debate. It's like 4 or 5. And so you really just got to pay attention and don't get caught up in the TV and all that. Really do your research on politics and really do your research on what you want to do, and how to help the world.
Absolutely, very good. Young man, Tarzan, you got something else you want to say?
I think it's a pleasure for black people to vote because we didn't get to vote sometimes.
That's right, and that's I think what is important when we're talking about civic engagement, when we talk about voting and so on, because when we was talking about Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement and so on, and now they like we were talking about earlier, folks have died and been through a lot, not just during the '60s, but since blacks have been free, and what you saw about adding, that amendment in the 13th Amendment, and when they amended it, they also added in there, the open up the door that you can still be enslaved for punishment of a crime, and so now we're dealing with that now, and so these are things we want to change. We still got a lot of changes to make. We want to change that 13th Amendment, then take that out of there because they're using that for profit and everything else, and it affects people like you all. Yeah, exactly.
And we ain't even got equipment in my high school. It ain't even equipment like for the sports and activities. We ain't even had the after school tutoring, the people telling us to get ready for the ACT testing. We ain't had that in my school. Like when I was coming up in high school, and that's just 3 years ago from here.
Right, and that's important because a lot of times people think that folks are just talking when they talk about when you look at poverty and when you look at communities and how communities of color and specifically black communities, and when you look at white communities and you look at the schools and look how communities of colors are treated versus other colors. And so, time just flew. We ran out of time real quick because I most definitely still want to go. But thank you all, and we got to have you back. And have some more conversation about this. Want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in with us to what's happening now on KBLKRadio.com. Tune back in next Sunday at 10 o'clock a.m. All right, God bless you.
God bless you,
and we look forward to coming back next week.